Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
So I apologize. I'm in the car right now. I am actually off on PTO. So once Carter gets in here, once Visco gets in here, I will turn it over to them, and they will take the stage.
Got it.
Looks like Carter's here, so I will hand it off to you guys. I'll be hosting the space, but like I said, I'll be off. But enjoy.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a smaller audience today just because it's the getting close to New Year. But all of these are always recorded and we always get these uploaded to YouTube. So even if there's not a huge crowd, still an awesome opportunity to learn about Starshell and spread the education around it. So without further ado, what is Starshell and what's the history behind Starshell as a project and the motivation and perhaps an introduction to who the speaker is?
Yeah, thanks. Carter. It's so hey guys, my name is Blake, sup doggy, and Starshell is a brand new wallet that is being built for the secret network. And the ethos behind the product is privacy and security above all else. And the way that it started was about a little more than a year ago. I was about a year and a half ago. I discovered the secret network through one of my colleagues and had, you know, pretty poor user experience trying to use Kepler. And I've been a developer my whole life. Worked in crypto space developing dApps on Ethereum before, years before, and always worked in the web ever since I started developing. So I decided to write a proposal to the Secret Labs grant program to get funding to develop a wallet specifically to improve the user experience and apply the basically the pinnacle of my skills to just make a better wallet. Since then, it's turned into really more about like taking advantage of all the features that the Cosmos SDK provides that no other wallets really seem to be taking advantage of, and not only making it about privacy and security and improving user experience on the secret network, but also just pushing what it means to be like a wallet for users on in cryptocurrency in general, both for desktop and mobile, with the features that we can provide thanks to the really incredible stack that already exists within the Cosmos SDK. So that's a little bit of brief history about kind of how the project got started and where it is currently. Like I said, we're really close to launching. So the software is currently being audited. You can actually track the progress online by Certic right now. They're expecting to complete the audit sometime in the new year. And then once we get the audit report, we're going to probably, take a week or so to review it and make any changes that they suggest, do final touches, and then submit to be published on the various, web stores, including the App Store for iPhone. And excuse me.
Oh, did I break up there?
Okay.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go.
So that's a brief intro into the product. And so yeah.
That's awesome. I know specifically, Secret Network has the potential to improve wallet security and privacy. And I know specifically you also mentioned wanting to, push forward the UI UX component of wallets in general. So if we zoom out here and you look at MetaMask and Kepler, which I would say are the two most, relevant wallets when it comes to thinking about building a wallet, where have those gone right? And what do you think needs to be improved, and how does Starshell compare to them, and where's the difference in philosophy ultimately manifest itself?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when we were designing a lot like when we were designing the UI, Kepler and MetaMask were the starting point, comparing them to each other and as a basis for what the wallet experience is for users. So what they've gotten right is, I think, simplicity for the most part, right? Simplicity is meaning like it's not too complicated, because one of the problems I think that cryptocurrency in general faces is onboarding new users. And if it's difficult for new users to get started, or if it's frustrating, or if they feel dumb or it's too complicated, it's, you can lose a lot of people that way. It's like, you want them to have a good experience within the first 5 to 10 minutes. So I wouldn't say that they've done it exceptionally well, but and whether or not they even intended to do it that way, they are relatively simple to use. So I think they got that, I think they have that going for them. On the other hand, they're certainly lacking cohesion. So MetaMask does this to some degree. Like, they have contacts where you can save accounts to like an address book, right? But it's not even very well integrated. So there's really only one path. Just to give an example, not to pick on MetaMask or anything. I mean, they're the biggest wallet, so they can't really be picked on. But there's really only one path to like get to a contact, and it's from that path. You can't even like get back to, okay, now I found the contact I want to send to. Now let me send to them. Right? The only way to send to the contact is to go through the send path and then specify the contact. So it's not very well integrated, and it's clear that every feature in MetaMask has been added as time has progressed, or as some might say, is added as an afterthought rather than as integrated as a whole. So the design, it reflects that. And I don't know if you've it's spending so much time on Secret Network. It's been a while sometimes since I've like actually gone and used MetaMask, because a lot of my assets are just kind of sitting. And when I went to use it again, I realized really it's actually really not that great of an app. Like, it really doesn't have a lot going for it in terms of UI and UX. So it really doesn't take a lot of effort to do better than MetaMask, which is surprising. Um, and so there are a lot of other wallets online that actually do a pretty good job of UI. They're just much smaller, right? And they specialize. And I think that's great. But unfortunately, it's also kind of like, MetaMask still dominates the market because they just had first mover advantage, and they're trusted because they're so large now. But just because they're in that position doesn't mean they should be. And I mean, we've already seen like recently, that Infura, which is the API provider, default API provider for MetaMask, which is owned by the parent company Consensus, doesn't care too much about privacy. Like, what they care more about is, well, obviously abiding by local regulations, but moreover, it seems like maybe making it easier for the authorities to collect that information about, suspicious activity or whatever, by really having a terrible privacy policy. So, that's kind of what happens when you're the largest provider of a wallet in the world, right? Is you just kind of naturally tend to become more centralized, and kind of like less, they're naturally, you're less incentivized to be a provider for the people, I'd say. That's just what happens. So, for us being like so small, and really not even having like a profitable business model yet. It's all for us, it's all about just growing our user base. Being, it's completely open source. I essentially at this point just grant and community funded. So, yeah, our motives are just to create like the best tool right now for this kind of small community, especially in a bear market right now. And hopefully, with that, slight momentum, expand into other sister Cosmos chains, and kind of hopefully grow organically that way. So, grow our user base laterally into chains like Juno and maybe Osmosis, Akash, chains like that. That's kind of the goal.
So I think that was a great rundown of maybe the flaws of MetaMask and Kepler, which seems like there's been a convergence towards simplicity, and any features that have been added afterwards maybe weren't done is in as holistic of a way that they could be. So that being said, one thing you acknowledged was, first mover advantage. There's lots of users on these wallets. So for Starshell, how do you kind of get through the cold start problem of acquiring users and getting applications to integrate your wallet?
Yeah, getting applications to integrate problem is, I think, going to continue to be a bit of a challenge. The first way that we're addressing that is by just making it fully one-to-one with Kepler. So the API back for dApps is the exact same as it is for Kepler. And then on the client side, we just do a little bit extra. So for example, when the dApp requests a viewing key in Kepler, it's just granted by default without any sort of prompts. It's just there. But with Starshell, when the dApp requests a viewing key, we just make sure that the dApp has been granted permission to access it. And if not, then it'll ask the user, or maybe the user already set a policy that says just allow it, all access. So we have a little more fine-grained control where we can implement better privacy practices just into the existing Kepler API. But the thing is that we are also working on a full separate API that will work in parallel, that offers much better just privacy inherent to the way the API works, and also opens up more features that the wallet can provide to dApps. So it'll be kind of like an opt-in thing where dApps can take advantage of that newer API. And so that's the first thing about how do we provide better, integration with existing dApps, with less friction. And then what was the first part of the question again?
It was largely, like I said, the cold start problem of acquiring users and getting dApps to
Right.
integrate.
Yes. So then the other thing I wanted to say about that is that we also started an open initiative called the Wallet Hardening Improvement Protocol, WIP, which is a body of open standards, where we are producing specs to formalize interaction between wallets and dApps, specifically web dApps, on GitHub, with things like app metadata, and token metadata. So right now there's two up there. There's WIP 2 and WIP 3. And the idea behind that is that we're really hopeful that other dApps and other wallets will adopt and contribute to these open standards. And it's specifically designed to improve this interaction between these very closely operating components, the dApp layer and the client's personal wallet layer. So the two that we have out there right now are really easy to implement, and we've started asking dApps to try and support them. And it honestly takes probably 10 minutes. And it's just simply adding some HTML to their webpage using already existing best practices for the web. And those are things like declaring your app name in the metadata rather than just like using the title of the web page, so that when the dApp is granted permissions in the wallet, its app name shows up as an app like in the wallet, right? Kind of like just like you would have installing apps onto your phone. And then the other thing is icons for and metadata for tokens and contracts. So a lot of things, let's take Shade, for example, is going to have a whole set of contracts that the user is going to be interacting with when they're using the platform. And what, with this proposal, with this standard, basically what the app can do is provide metadata for like the icon and name of those contracts, so that when the user interacts with them, the wallet shows the name and the icon of the contract whenever they send an execution to it or whenever they see it in their history. And that just provides a lot more context for users and ideally transparency when they're interacting with smart contracts or like reviewing items in their history. As for the cold start problem with users, I think that is an ongoing challenge, and we're going to have to learn how to how to get around, how to address that head on. So up until now, I've pretty much been fully focused on product development and starting just now to switch gears to marketing. I think there are some other inherent challenges right now, like the bear market. There's just not a whole lot of activity. I'm sure that Shade is also facing that problem a bit, although Shade has a much bigger audience, obviously, for good reason too. They have a lot going for use cases. So I think, our MO is just going to be to try and really facilitate the current ecosystem. So I'm really happy that this is happening today. I think that if anything, like whatever Starshell can do to facilitate onboarding people to getting to use Shade, because our launches are also pretty close in timing, that's the best we can do right now, is just really trying to help new users or even existing users using current and new dApps on the platform, to help get started with Starshell. That's our best approach.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see Starshell out in the wild and get it integrated onto a bunch of Secret Network dApps. I think it's going to be great to see Starshell grow. One question I have is, one of the complaints about Kepler, specifically as a Secret Network user and builder, is Kepler's really generalized its tech stack to manage the abstracted out concept that Cosmos is built for blockchains to be rapidly spun up, right? And, Secret Network is a very specific tech stack. So as Kepler's continue to grow in other directions, it's kind of failed to meet the needs specifically of Secret Network as a tech stack. But that's kind of one of its strengths, right? Is that it's so generalized. So for Starshell, because you're starting on Secret Network, I'd imagine you have the inverse problem where you become over-spec'd potentially just for Secret Network and maybe struggle with the generalization of the larger Cosmos. So how are you managing that within your design philosophy, the tension between wanting to be a Secret Network focused wallet while also, I'd imagine, having dreams of being a larger wallet for the entire Cosmos?
That's exactly true. The thing, however, is that because it's being built as like a specialized Secret Network wallet, I anticipate that it's going to be pretty straightforward to expand to other chains, because it's easier to generalize than to specialize. For in this instance, it's not given, it's not trivial. There are certainly going to be a few hurdles, but the fact that we've been able to really forced to to like carve out all of the potential use cases in the design has really, I think, put us in a really good place to add more specialized features for other chains. So to expand on what I mean about that, like from the beginning, we've already started with like, okay, so simulation is a somewhat new feature on Cosmos where you can simulate a transaction or fee grant even. Okay, so fee grant is a feature where you can use the funds of another account to pay your gas fees. Similar to another module on Cosmos called Auth. So it's because it's relatively new, not even like all Cosmos chains are using it yet because they have to pull in the latest Cosmos SDK, right, every time and then do a hard fork. It is currently actually in Secret Network fee grant, and it works, which is awesome. So Cosmos or Kepler just added that a few weeks ago to their wallet, and it was added, with a fairly well UI, but it doesn't work on Secret Network because it's the way that they calculate the fee and run the simulation can be difficult when you're executing a computation. So for us, we had to solve that problem anyway. So that was a specialized use case. Now going to the generalized use case, it's actually way easier because we just have to turn off one of the extra features that we had to implement. So there's a lot of things like that where it's actually way harder to implement the specialized version of it. And then the non-secret version, the non-secret WASM version, because it just naturally has more constraints and more requirements, is just easy because it's just a matter of turning off that thing. So I think the biggest challenge with generalizing is just going to be getting the specialized features of that chain, whatever they are, represented in the wallet, rather than like, everything that works in the Cosmos world already natively in the wallet is just, I think, going to be really straightforward. It's just going to be a matter of what's that, what are those few things that specialized layer one is doing, or that needs something different, some special representation or UI component in the wallet, and then appealing to the community of that chain. I think that's really the biggest thing, is like, how do you convince people to take the time out of their day to dig out their seed phrase and re-enter it into a new wallet, or if they're using Ledger, even just switching to a new wallet can be cumbersome or painstaking. So I think convincing the existing user base to switch wallets, they have to have a good reason, right? There has to be something really compelling about that new wallet with new features, that adds a whole layer of convenience for them that makes it worth the switch. So and not to continue rambling on, but just to throw this in, I think the one thing that we do exceptionally well that none of the other wallets on Cosmos do is notifications. And it took a lot of work to get there. So the wallet subscribes to Tendermint WebSocket for an array of events related to anytime the user sends or receives transactions, as well as for whenever a contract is executed, and if that user is and if that user's balance or transfer history associated with that token changed, to issue a notification. So the moment that you receive a token transfer, or that let's say like your proposal is voted on, or a new proposal is floated to the chain, anything related to where a user would want to be notified immediately of something happening on chain, Starshell has subscriptions to all those events and can issue a notification to the user. So just that alone increasing the level of interaction and liveliness of the chain to the end user, I think is going to be a very compelling use case for a lot of people to switch away from Kepler, at the very least.
Yeah, I think notifications. I like one day I want to be able to have a mobile app, receive a transaction from another user, and have like a little text message that's like, hey, you just received X number of funds, or a little vibration and a little pop up that's like, hey, you just received funds from contact A, B, and C, right? Like, and the only way you get there is by beginning to set up the building blocks of a notification system tied to a wallet. So I think that's very forward thinking of you guys. If you can nail the notification system and nail the contact component while having this integrated into a mobile experience, I think you definitely are putting yourself in a niche that's in line with the standards we all have for mobile development and Web2 financial applications. So that being said, there was an interesting tweet from Josh Lee that I thought was fascinating. I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, where he said something to the effect of being a wallet provider is it's far more about being an infrastructure provider than like a software provider, if that makes sense. So what are the plans for the scalability tied to the API of the infrastructure that you're setting up here? Because so much of the wallet experience is based on that. And then what are typical security problems tied to APIs and scalability problems, and how do you anticipate solving for them as Starshell grows in adoption?
Yeah. So initially, we had huge plans in terms of API nodes and server-side stack. We drew up a really complex architecture, but pretty quickly realized that the priority, like our focus, does not need to be on that, because we're just currently not facing heavy loads. But so basically what I'm saying is that is scalability is going to be an important problem to solve when the day comes, and we're not there yet. So currently the approach is that we're going to use the few API nodes that we have and combine the support from the community. So there's a number of validators who are willing to provide their API nodes for free as a backend to a load balanced backend for the wallet, and that's what we're going to be doing for the beginning stages, at least until mid 2023, I think, and continue focusing on the front end development and all the features, and keep a close eye on what the load that the wallet is putting on those backends. Initially, we had, like I said, designed a really complex architecture, and there's the reason that we kind of very quickly switched away from putting so much focus on that is because we're really limited by resources. We simply just don't have enough manpower to do that, and if we put more time into the back end infrastructure, we would either have to continue to delay the wallet, or just like continue accruing debt. So it really became a matter of, okay, is this a priority right now? And the answer was no, because this demand simply is not there currently. So again, ideally it will be a good thing if it does become a problem. So if we need to scale backend for Secret Network, then that means Secret Network is doing well, and that means that our reserves are doing well, and we can pay people to focus on that again. But it really became a problem of, okay, in this continually downtrending bear market, we really need to focus on what is the most critical components right now, and the backend just simply was not a critical component. So existing infrastructure is more than enough, but like I said, we designed this really complex architecture. So when the day comes, we'll be ready with our designs, but we'll have to implement. So yeah, I mean, full transparency. It's really not an issue yet. And the, there might come a day where we run into scaling issues, which we've seen before many times. I mean, that's what drove a lot of frustration initially with Kepler is anytime there was like a huge minting event, people were frustrated because Kepler was non-responsive, and that in turn was caused by you know, their API nodes that they were relying on being cluttered with queries, and so a lot of things have changed since then. Like already with the latest secret network upgrade, queries are like an order of magnitude quicker, and require far less resources than before. So even just the profile, the load profiles is changing. So yeah, I think it's something that is going to have to be, unfortunately, trial and error. Like it's going to have to fail first before we know what the weak point is, to then focus efforts on improving the weakest point in that architecture. But moreover, so you know, I agree somewhat that with Josh's tweet, but that it's important, but I disagree that it's the most important. I think that's totally depends on the chain and the demands that that its community is putting on it.
I mean, it makes sense. Essentially, you're saying you'll scale API infrastructure as the load and demand for it scales, and you've thought about the architecture to make that possible. So I think that makes total sense. Scale with the load increasing. I kind of have two questions left. The final question will be about what privacy means to Starshell. But before we get to that question, I kind of want to touch on some of the existing wallet hacks in crypto. What has that looked like? What have been the most common vulnerabilities of wallets, and how does Starshell, what is Starshell's security posture?
So in terms of severity, I think that the fair metric to use is sheer amount of money lost to bad actors. And using that metric, by far the largest problem in crypto is actually scams and frauds. So it's humans being tricked way more than actual hacks happening. This is true for both centralized exchanges and you know, like personal like confidence scams where people's wallets seed phrases are compromised, or they're sending funds to the wrong person because they're being led to believe that it's a support agent or this or that. So that is actually, and it's like orders of magnitude more than the next, following category, which is surprising. Very surprising, that there are just so many, I don't want to say gullible, but maybe vulnerable people out there, which is a telling lesson in and of itself, right? I think it's telling because it shows that there are a lot of people who are using crypto who are really drawn and attracted to the idea of crypto, but maybe aren't super tech savvy and don't need to be, right? Or shouldn't have to be. Right? Like you shouldn't have to understand, I think, like on a deep technical level, how these technologies work. But you should know enough to hopefully be aware of what good security practices are. But I mean, this has been a problem in computing ever since, the internet, right? Is like online security, and how do you educate users? How do you keep them safe, without, making it too impossible for them to do what they need to or want to. So in terms of security, that the scamming and frauding is, like I said, the largest threat facing users today in terms of funds lost historically. And for that problem, there's not a whole lot you can do. But what you can do is, I think, I guess it's really a no, a nothing statement, but the best you can do is all you can do. And so what we're doing is, at the very least, we have this anti-spoofing art thing. So there is a unique piece of, like, there's a unique avatar generated for every account that is deterministic to the actual, like, private seed of that account. And what that means is basically, like, if you lose your account and then recreate it, the same exact, like, avatar will be there because it's deterministic. And what that art does is that it basically provides a visual representation of anytime the user is interacting with that account. It's like the visual identity of that account. And the point of that is that to prevent some other malicious app from, like, tricking the user into clicking something like clickjacking, for example, or basically tricking the user into believing that they're interacting with Starshell when they're not. So it's an anti-spoofing mechanism. So that's one thing that we've done to try to, at least prevent that type of spoofing. But there's a lot of other avenues that people can be scammed, like Twitter, for example. Like, this whole, like, anytime, I don't know if it's changed now, but as of recently, like, anytime you even mention MetaMask, Kepler, or one of those hashtags, you'd be bombarded with these bots that were claiming to be from, like, Kepler accounts, or Kepler support, or MetaMask support, and, like, this or that, or even on Discord you get DMs, and on Telegram. So I've like drawn up ideas about how to, like, even combat those bots with, like, vigilante bots that will go around and either, like, automatically ban those users when it sees them in the groups when it can, or, like, if it can't ban them, like, posting right below it, like, warning, like, the above thing is a scam, like, don't trust it, having some sort of automated mechanism to, like, combat the bots. But I mean, that, who knows how effective those approaches will be. It's really all kind of just, like, dreaming up ways to do whatever you can to help those poor poor naive users who don't know any better from being scammed. So that's really the biggest challenge, is just all the scams and fraudsters. Going below that to the next category, there is a lot of things that we're doing on the security layer that are just really technical that I think I don't make sense to dive into today. But if anyone's ever interested about that stuff, hop in the Discord, and there's a lot of resources that I can point you to. And then also, I highly encourage everyone to read the audit report when it comes out, and to get an idea for what the findings of the audit were. Even they should even mention some of, like, the less severe things about how we're storing user data in the browser, on the user's device, fully encrypted, the encryption methods we're using, the resistance to brute force attacks, and how vulnerable the app would be even if there was malicious software on the user's device. So that should all be covered in the audit report.
Awesome. It's interesting to hear about the vigilante counterbots. That's a fascinating idea. I've never heard that before, but that's really cool. So to close things out, really really appreciate your time hopping up on this Twitter space. We'll close with, what does privacy mean to you personally, and what does it mean to Starshell ethos wise? And then after that, we can open it up for any community questions for anyone that wants to be pulled up onto the stage.
Totally. Yeah, and thanks for letting me ramble. I know sometimes I'll just go off on a tangent a little bit. I hope it's still interesting to everyone. So as far as what the privacy ethos to me, I was really inspired by Edward Snowden, and one of the quotes that I always butcher of his is that saying you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide, right? Like, that's the common retort you hear from people, like, oh, well, who cares? Like, I got nothing to hide. Like, why should I care about privacy? Is akin to saying that you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. So it's the deeper meaning there is that it's not just about your personal privacy, it's about the privacy of everyone. It's about the global mass privacy. And it goes so much deeper than that even. It's like if you don't fight for individual privacy, then what tends to happen is that on a larger scale, there is less concern and less care about individual privacy, right? Because it's not something that they see anyone fighting for. And what ends up happening is that the few organizations or people at privileged positions will accrue more unbalanced power through that lack of privacy, because there becomes an information asymmetry. Those few who are either gatekeepers of information, such as, like they run the server that everyone needs to use, or they are like the social media company or whatever, possess that private information of all those people, or of the masses. And with that information that they keep to themselves, they don't share, they're able to wield that to their gain, for their benefit, to the detriment of those masses. And I mean, that is like, if there's any lesson to be taken from the past 10 to 20 years from Web 2, I think it's simply that is the information asymmetry power dynamic that is granted to social media companies. I think is the best example, and the horrible effect that has on society and the economy. I mean, look at how filthy rich these tech companies have become in countries where there's like an increasing wealth disparity. So to get from privacy to that, I think I'm not sure people recognize how closely tied together those concepts are. So to me, it's so important, because it's really an easy thing to solve. Like, wealth disparity is not an easy thing to solve, but privacy actually is. Like, privacy is easy to solve because it's just a matter of making an awesome or better version of an existing like use case or need in the form of an app, and then using it and like convincing your friends to use it. That's what Signal did, and they did it wonderfully. Right? Signal did exactly that, and they're kicking ass right now. So it's well, I think I've said enough. I think I answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think the Edward Stone quote where he says, "Arguing you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say." It's such a powerful quote that everyone really needs to memorize and spread. The implications of it are, as you said, very, very important. And yeah, thanks for sharing the ethos and philosophy behind privacy that you individually carry and Starshell carries. So that being said, I want to open the floor here for anyone that has a question, and then we'll close things out from there. So Dalton, if you want to be on the edge of your seat as the host, see if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask Starshell a question. All right. Well, as the co-host here, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but overall, really appreciate your time. Like I said, this will be uploaded to YouTube sometime in the next week or so. Look forward to spreading this Twitter space around, and really excited to see. Actually, one requested. Wait, was there a request? Actually, we have Red Eye coming up here.
Cool.
Approve. Let's see if Twitter allows me to do this. There we go. Red Eye Bear, you're on stage. Thanks for hopping up, Twitter space regular. The floor is yours.
How's it going, guys? This has been a great space. I would be lying if I said I wasn't biased. I've been extremely excited about the launch of Starshell since I heard about it, and through my conversations with Blake, kind of talking about some of the more nitpicky details of what Starshell is going to be providing to the different customer bases. I can't help but just be absolutely ecstatic for it to get out in the wild and for you guys to finally launch. My question for you, Blake, is how do you plan, and by you I mean Starshell, how do you plan on supporting power users with your wallet? Because most of the conversation between Shade and Starshell has been talking about, average retail users getting just general adoption. But I'm curious if you guys are providing any specific tooling or features to better support power users, whether that be easier access to on-chain data, kind of opening up CLI functionalities to a traditional front end, like web front end. So if you can provide any information on that, that would be great.
Yeah. So a lot of the design has been basically me wanting some power user feature to be implemented, and then our lead designer kind of arguing with me to make it simpler. So I think we've actually had the problem of making it really simple, which is why I mentioned that I think Kepler and MetaMask kind of do that well, whether or not they meant to. Just the fact that they have a lot less features, I think, makes it simpler. So inherently, Starshell is really, at least in its current form, a lot more power user friendly than beginner friendly, unfortunately, because I think that might make it harder to onboard brand new users unless they are already a little bit tech savvy. And that's just a really just a consequence of the fact that there are a lot of features and a lot of controls. So already it's very power user friendly, and kind of have the inverse problem of making it simpler. But in terms of what are those features, there's things like search. So you can just tap a few keystrokes. Like you can use your keyboard to get to anywhere in the wallet without using your mouse, for example, which is a power user feature, because in a matter of half a second, you can already be doing something. And then you mentioned the CLI thing. So yeah, I've actually had this, I've thought a lot about like an interactive command or query builder that's very, very similar to like the hierarchical like tree version that the CLI is, where you kind of like start with the transaction, and then you go into the governance module, and then you specify the command of the governance module, and then the subcommand of that command, and like as a UI. And then I think about like, does this need to be within the wallet, or is this really something that belongs on the dApp side? So that's the other question I often find myself asking, is like, does this power user feature really need to be natively built into the wallet? Or is this something that is such a power user feature that affects so few people that it really belongs more as a web dApp, where it can be rapidly prototyped and updated rather than tied to the update cadence of the extension? So yeah, that's something I find myself asking a lot. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely no shortage of power user features, even without the interactive query builder. And I'm like super, like I'm a power user myself, so I'm like super keen on adding those features. And it's like I said, it's just a matter of like, does this make sense in the wallet? And even just that question, I mean, it's hard to answer. Like, does this belong in the wallet or not? So
yeah, the main reason I was, well, I guess it's a twofold reason why I am interested in the answer. One, because power use. I don't know, I'm kind of torn on who is harder to please, power users or retail. But like being able to provide a product for a more advanced user base, kind of like you said, it's easier to go from specialized to generalized versus generalized to specialized. But secondly, within Web3, it seems like, trust is a big thing, both in Web2, Web3, and power users, especially ones who are active on social media, hold an incredibly large amount of trust from the general user base. And so from an adoption standpoint, I can't help but think if you can win over power users, they are going to naturally promote your product, whether it be, very open shilling or more person to person talking about things. But being able to win over that user base who already has the trust of, different groups of retail users, that could potentially be an interesting strategy, for increasing
Exactly.
adoption. Yeah.
100%. I think you and I even talked about this before. That really the strategy that we're sort of trying out, like incidentally, is appealing to power users and gaining footing that way. Because, like you said, and as Vitalik has said, that trust is the most valuable asset on the internet. That if you have power users saying that their favorite wallet to use, is X, then naturally those tend to be the most trusted members in the community, and naturally they'll recommend, to other people, or, you ask your friend, like, hey, which wallet should I install, or this or that. Gaining footing that way through the trusted community members, because they are the ones who tend to be the power users. So appealing to the power users and the positive effects that has on user adoption. I completely agree.
I appreciate you providing some insight into some of your strategy and decision-making choices about adoption and kind of how you're planning on approaching your different customer bases. Again, I'll just reiterate, I'm so freaking excited for Starshell to come out. So waiting for the day to see that tweet come out that Starshell's live.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited too. It's a bit nervous getting this close to mainnet launch and being like, okay, this is actually finally it. After almost exactly 1 year of development, of pretty much nonstop, like full-time development.
That's wild. Well, we wish you luck with your mainnet launch. We're going to be closing out the Twitter space here. One exciting thing is that we'll be going live with the Shade Bridge today. So if you haven't already, be sure to tune into that. That should be going live within the next 2 hours. Generalized IBC bridge. You can do transfers from Juno to the Cosmos blockchain. It does not require that it's transfers just to Secret Network. It's a totally generalized IBC interface. Really beautiful UI UX. And then it's also an updated wrap page, so people can bridge in ERC20s from Axelar and then wrap them into their privacy-preserving equivalent. So really big day for Shade Protocol, and of course we'll have Shade Swap launching in the not-too-distant horizon, but first we want to get the bridge out there and make sure everything's locked and loaded for that first part of the user story. So be sure to check that out today at app.shadeprotocol.io.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carter, for having me on. Really appreciate it.
100%. It was a pleasure. We'll have to do it again sometime, and I can't wait to check out Starshell once it's live on mainnet. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.